Sorry. Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by again. This is our weekly Wednesday night live stream. We're going to be talking about all sorts of things. As usual, we're taking the questions from the audience. I want to hear from you as much as possible, but we're also going to be talking about a few things. A couple comments right off the top already. We're going to get to some of those. Also, I want to give a bit of a shout out to everybody that's been so supportive to the channel. One thing I've noted, after Bernie dropped out, the views for a lot of progressive channels started to dip, but, a lot more people have been joining the channel and coming by, and I want to welcome any of those people that are here. As always, Brianna will be co-hosting. She'll be staying with us for as long as she can, but, she's got busy days at work in addition to doing these. So
I just really came to make fun of you and then go to bed.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair too. One thing I want to talk about off the top, or maybe we'll take some of these first questions, is I'm going to play you a clip of Jagmeet Singh earlier today. I want to talk about that first, and I'm going to play you the clip. So
do you want to go through Super Chats?
Yeah. Well, let's go through the we got some of the opening comments, say hi to people, and then we'll go into that. Yeah.
Okay, are you done your opening comments?
Yeah, because I'll talk about these things at once. I want to set up the video, then play it.
Okay, well, Lisa Hildebrand is here. Samantha Sider, Jason Kenny, Dan Cordovan, of course, Samantha Sider, Peggy Russell. Oh, Craig is here, Craig Adolph.
Hey, Craig, how's it going, everybody?
Of course.
Everybody excited about Jagmeet. I see Lisa saying it's a big day for Canada. It is for my American audience. Today was a big day in the Canadian scene. We had, on the one hand, Canada lost its bid for a seat on the Security Council. For those who don't know, it's like the biggest committee at the UN. The big five countries are permanent. Russia, China, England, France, the United States. You guys are always on it. And you guys get the veto. But then the other countries can run for seats. And Canada, Justin Trudeau has been so thirsty for this seat. Thirstier than a person in the middle of the Sahara, Justin Trudeau was for this seat, right?
That is not the right application of the term thirsty.
Yeah, so thirsty. And then he didn't get it, and everyone's making fun of Trudeau. Conservatives are, because they hate Trudeau, even when he agrees with them, irrationally. They hate Trudeau. We on the left are like, of course you didn't get this. You're America's lapdog. You supported coups in Bolivia. You support Bolsonaro's awful regime. You sell weapons to Saudi Arabia, and on and on and on. You don't deserve this, especially over countries like Ireland and especially Norway that play more positive roles in the world. So that was a big thing. And also, we'll talk about Jagmeet in a little bit as well. We'll go into that. One thing I just want to note, a lot of channel members here, they are sharing some of the special emojis we have. I have the NDP emoji and the CCF emoji. So if you want access to some of the special emojis we have, one way you can do that is becoming a channel member. I can add more now, actually, that I have more channel members. So I have to think of some cool new ones to add. We have like a Bernie one, a Tommy Douglas one. I might look to make a Jagmeet one.
Make me an emoji.
Maybe make a Brie. Yeah, I might make a Bree-moji. That's actually a good one. I'm going to make a Bree-moji maybe. That'll be fun, yeah.
Okay, but I feel like before we do anything else, we have to talk about your, wrong use of the term thirsty.
No, well, I understand thirsty is like I get it. It can
thirsty means attention.
Yeah, no,
you want attention. You're thirsty.
Yeah, but it could also mean you want something. If you're thirsty for that gal or that guy,
that is not,
you're thirsty. Yeah.
No.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we'll have a debate about this.
Well, everyone chime in on the comments.
Yeah.
If I'm right or if Christo's right. Okay, let's go to super chats.
Yeah, let's hit our super chats.
Can you go to the analytics, please?
Yes. Yeah. Good call. My mouse is all jammed up here.
Maybe if you cleaned your desk, it wouldn't,
maybe.
Like I asked you to. Okay, Samantha Sider says, no money for rent equals mass homelessness on July 1st.
I mean, look, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal in the U.S. especially. Even in Canada, our CERB, the Emergency Response Benefit, has been extended. But that's not enough for a lot of people to cover rent and food and utilities. And as I've been noting and a lot of people have been noting, not everyone who needs it is getting the CERB. So, every first of the month is there is this crisis. And in some jurisdictions, there's basically, like no eviction rules. But, eventually these rules are going to be suspended. And, I do worry about mass evictions in some communities in Canada. And I assume in the States, because you guys don't have a universal $2,000 monthly payment. Ours isn't universal, of course, but it's available to a lot of people who need it. And so I do worry about that. I really do worry. And I know some states have not extended their no eviction orders. Like they're coming up either this month or next month. And things are not going to be normal by July 1st or even August 1st, probably.
Well, there's certainly no way things are going to be normal in 2.5 weeks.
Well, exactly, right?
I mean, the CERB was just extended in Canada for another 8 weeks past October 3rd.
But even that, we're not sure. Yeah.
Which tells you, like, they're not expecting an economic recovery by December.
No, you're right. That's a great point. Yeah,
right?
no, yeah. And if they're extending it to October, that's at the very least where we need to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Samantha. That was a great question. Jason Kennedy, no question, but a lovely little fox cheering emoticon.
Yeah.
Emoji? What do you call those? Emoticons.
Yeah. Well, it's like a little, it's a little sticker. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it.
And so John Barlich, with the super chat says, oh gosh, roses is red, violets is blue. Hey, I took off work today to be here today. Yay.
John, that's fantastic. That's a Nobel laureate quality piece of poetry. I love it. John, thanks for being here and for your support.
I thought he was going to rhyme blue with you.
Well,
so
I mean, I love it.
That's what I was going to say.
I love it. He's throwing you a curveball.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not, what is that called?
Yeah.
Stanzas?
I don't know. I know nothing of poetry.
Okay. John Bartlett, with the super chat, I love the sidebars with Christo and Brie. I do agree that I am the most entertaining part of this conversation. It adds a certain
something to the stream. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce this right, but I'm going to try really hard. Cam Shawari Kate says, with the super chat says, Trudeau was salivating to get into the UN.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, maybe salivating's better than thirsty, but he was...
salivating would be the proper use of that term.
Yeah, but no, 100%, Kate, 100%, he absolutely wanted it.
What does it mean that Canada's not on
the Security Council? I mean, look, fundamentally, it's like a prestige thing, because if the committee has to vote, like if the UN needs to launch a security mission, like they want to do something, you need the majority support of the Security Council, right? But you also need none of the 5 permanent members to oppose it. So let's say you want to do something in China or condemn China for their treatment of the Uyghurs. Not unreasonable, right? Like not unreasonable. But you could have all 14 members, because I think it's 5 permanent, 10 temporary, like 10 elected. All 14 can be against it. But as long as China says, no, we're not going to do it, then we're not going to do it. Same thing with the U.S. I mean, every country on that committee could want to censor Israel. But if the United States says, nah, we're gonna side with Israel, then you're fine. So Canada, it has some value, but at the end of the day, the 5 big powers decide almost everything on that committee. Like the 5 big powers decide almost everything. Collectively and just individually because of the veto.
Well, and quite frankly, Canada was probably hitting above its weight being on that council, just like we're not really supposed to be in the G7 either.
Well, right? Yeah, so. and again, David Dole, Brie and I were talking about it. I don't know if you guys saw it. David Dole from the Rational National had a fantastic tweet where he said Canada doesn't need to be on this committee. The USA already has 1 vote. It doesn't need a second. Perfectly said, because Canada is more often than not a U.S. puppet in terms of foreign policy, especially on the issues that matter most. Yeah, 100%. We have a super chat here from Joseph, I believe, right?
Thank you, Christo.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so Joseph Mangano with the super chat says, who is worth Matt Gates?
Yes? Gates, yeah, I
Gates
think, yeah.
Or Ted Cruz? Is anyone worse than Ted Cruz?
I mean, I think Gates might be worst.
He is the...
Yeah, Ted Cruz is awful, but I think his sycophantry is even worse than Ted Cruz. I mean, there was a few months where it looked like Ted Cruz was gonna, just not endorse Donald Trump. Remember that? He was like, vote your conscience.
After he got called the something killer, right?
Yeah,
when
Donald Trump called Ted Cruz the Zodiac killer.
Zodiac killer.
This one's getting demonized. Got racism in the title. Talking about Zodiac killers.
You're blaming me
No,
for
no.
your stream
You
getting
know,
demonetized?
yeah, I'm just saying.
Oh my
yeah.
goodness.
But
Okay.
but yeah, I think Getz is worst. So guys, I want to play you this clip.
Why though? You didn't say it.
His sycophantry, like he's such a Trump like fanboy. He's a sitting congressman, and he spends most of his time like talking about Trump like a random Trump bot on Twitter. Yeah, I think he's worse than Ted Cruz. I do. I think so. Yeah. One thing here. Okay. So I want to do this. It's something that I'm doing a little bit more on my videos. I'm going to play you this clip of Jagmeet Singh today. Now, in Parliament earlier today, he basically, the NDP put a motion to affirm that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is basically our federal police, have a systematic racism problem, which no reasonable person will deny, I think. And then also some policy steps to help address that. This was also based a couple days ago where Matthew Green, who you guys saw on this channel a couple weeks ago, said, let's put a motion forward to specifically deal with racism, including anti-Asian racism, which has been on the rise since since COVID, right? Yeah. Since March, February, whatever. And that's the same thing in the United States as well. But in Canada, especially in like the West, where we have a large East Asian population, people have been like directly and indirectly targeted by like random bigots, basically, right? And so both of those got voted down by the Bloc Quebecois, and one MP was involved in both of that. And Singh suggested that was an act of racism today. And when you call someone a racist in Parliament, it's seen as something you shouldn't do, even if it's true. And he was asked to take it back, basically, to apologize, wouldn't, and then was kicked out of the House of Commons today. And this was him speaking after that at around 5 p.m.
That MP not only say no, but make eye contact with me and just kind of brush his hand, dismiss it. And in that moment, I got angry. I'll be honest, I got angry. But I'm sad now. Because why can't we act? Why can't we do something to save people's lives? We can do something. And why would someone say no to that? That MP not only say no, but make eye contact with me and just kind of brush his hand.
So, like, I mean, I don't know, what do you think of that, Brie? What do you think of that clip?
I mean, it's sad that someone would, not only like not vote in favor of something that could save someone's life, but to, make eye contact and like do a motion of dismissal is hard. And I think Jagmeet to come out and to address the crowd and displaying the emotion that he displays, that takes a lot out of a person. So I think it's a really good showing for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he was speaking from the heart there. Like a mixture of anger and of sadness. Yeah, I totally agree. And guys, let me know, did that clip come out good for you on the technical end? Just like let us know in the comments, because I don't play too many clips. I want to do more of that.
People are asking just for the day.
Like what?
Remove just for the day, not forever.
Oh, yeah. Just to clarify, it's usually you're removed for the day or something, like for the session or whatever. This happens every now and then. Like, you're not supposed to call your opposing MP or whatever a liar.
There's supposed to be a level of decorum.
Yeah, but, like, honestly, if it's true, I think it should fit. And I think, like, it was very clear that, like, Singh was speaking with, like, legitimate frustration. And a lot of Canadians seem to be on his side here, at least I am. Now, for the context, the MP was from the Bloc Quebecois. Now, we've talked about the Bloc on this channel when a lot of the Americans ask, like, well, how to define the political parties. And what I've said about the Bloc lots of times is they are the most ideologically complicated party. Because you got, like, the Conservatives, and they're just, like, a conservative party. Like, they're center right to right, depending on the issue. You have the Liberal Party, which are, like, social progressives, economic center right. You have the Green Party, which is very eclectic, but in a weird way, like they don't actually have a policy book because their MPs don't have to be told how to vote. But they're sort of like social progressives on some issues, and then economic moderates on others. And then you have the NDP, which is like a center-left party, left and left. And then you have the Bloc, which is left and right on some economic issues, and then left and right on some social issues. And one of the things they're very conservative on is economic or the rights of minorities. And specifically in Quebec, that province at the provincial level, but it's supported by the Bloc, has a law basically that bans you from certain jobs if you wear religious symbols. Now, of course, surprise, surprise.
Bans you from wearing religious symbols if you have certain jobs.
Yes, but the effect is, if you're a Muslim woman and you wear the hijab, you are not allowed to be a teacher in Quebec anymore. It's a Islamophobic, racist act, and actually Jagmeet Singh himself would be prevented from having many jobs in Quebec. That's the law there, and it's supported by that party. Now, this party has basically also said during the election, they said, don't vote for Jagmeet Singh, vote for someone that looks like you, that resembles you. And what they meant was a white French Canadian. That's what they said, right? Don't vote for somebody that doesn't look like you. And so this party, at least as it currently exists, is, progressive in a gender sense. They have a good feminist program. They support women's right to choose. They support all those things, but they are outwardly hostile to the rights of religious minorities. And you might say, okay, well, being against a religion is not racism. Well, one, I don't know if I fully agree, because religion is often very connected to race for a lot of religions. But specifically, you'll notice that this never affects people who wear the crucifix. Mm-hmm. Never. Mm-hmm. This is a province where every goddamn street is like Sainte Thérèse de Magramec, you know what I mean? Like Marie d'Incarnation Square. All public space is named after like 400-year-old Catholics. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Named after popes, of bishops, of archbishops, of cardinals. Mm-hmm. Right? This is a place where religious symbols in the public's face are ubiquitous, but they're white and Christian. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. What do you want to do right now?
And so they're...
Do you want a question or?
Well, yeah. And so just like to say, like, Jagmeet Singh 100% nailed it. And this is a major issue here. And Singh was right to call it out. And basically, all Singh wants is for people to acknowledge, because you can't fix a problem until you acknowledge it, that our police are racist. And they are. Our police are systematically racist. And that we need to do things about it. And one thing Canada doesn't do, which the United States does, and I'm sure that the data is flawed, our police do not keep race-based data. So, Toronto, unlike other cities, like in the US, they don't have data about how many people are arrested and what ethnic background are there. Some people have done studies that using their best estimates and using geographic data and using, assumptions about community makeup. But those are just assumptions because the police hide their data. Right? Police hide their data. And so the fact of the matter is, right now, our police won't admit they're racist, and they're racist. And our police wantonly go out there and kill Indigenous people. I've told you guys about the Starlight tours, where they take drunk Indigenous men and throw them into the highway outside of Saskatoon or whatever, and let them freeze to death. We have a province in Canada, New Brunswick, where more Indigenous people have been killed by the RCMP than all the people have died from COVID in that province. In the last 2 weeks, more people have died from the police in New Brunswick, Indigenous people, than everybody has died from that province of COVID.
Clarify, that's 2 people.
That's 2 people, but I don't let the police clarify. We have an Indigenous man we talked about with Nikki Ashton. Indigenous man got run over by an RCMP officer in Iqaluit. A half Indigenous, half African American woman got thrown off a balcony by police. This like 2 days after the George Floyd situation. Indigenous people, 3 or 4, have been killed by police in Winnipeg. Some of these aren't RCMP. Most of them are. We saw the thing where the Indigenous chief, who effectively is the leader of a legitimate nation. Chiefs are First Nations leaders. You know, a duly elected leader of a nation was beaten up by cops. We just got the tape. That happened a while ago, but we just got the tape. Yeah, thank you for people for giving the names. Like, you know, for giving the names. Chantel Moore, Rodney Levy. Like, these are fundamental issues. And the police obscure our ability. And Justin Trudeau obscures our ability to actually learn about all the people that we didn't have cell phones to see. Or that, you know, didn't have friends that could get in touch with media. And so the Bloc's like, oh yeah, we don't want to learn about that. We want to keep the public unequipped to deal with the racism that we all know exists. So yeah, that MP is a racist. His party is racist. Get kicked out of Parliament for saying the truth. I don't know. Makes me sad. We can move on.
Okay. Memory FC is here. She says hello from Reno, Nevada. Good to be here. Bruce Banner is here. Is Bruce referred from the Discord? He wants you to not forget to plug the Discord.
Oh yes, good call. Thank you, Bruce. I'm gonna just let me pull that up here. So what do you think about the getting race-based data? Like why do you think we haven't gotten that? Like, do you think it's like a purposeful thing? Like they don't want to collect it because they know it'll make us look bad?
Oh, I couldn't imagine why they wouldn't want to collect it. Okay, let's see. If anyone, just remember to like the stream if you haven't, please.
So I just dropped the Discord link there. It's a great place to have chats with people. Really good discussion. I'll post the videos there. It's a fantastic place. Do check it out. It's still pretty small, but I would say like it's pretty active for a small Discord, and I assume it'll only get more active as it grows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. My name is Hello here from Berlin.
Oh, very, very nice. Berlin, Germany?
Yeah, Berlin, Germany.
We used to have a Berlin, Ontario, but actually it's called Kitchener now. For those who don't know, it was one of those cities. It was named Berlin, but then after World War I, basically, where cause we have a lot of German Canadians who suddenly became the enemy, they changed the city's name to Kitchener.
Yeah. He says that, or they say Germany has a minimum base income, but it's more for single people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Oh, people said that they couldn't hear the audio very well when you played the clip either.
Okay. Could you guys make it out, or was it just hard to hear? Because maybe I'll turn it up.
Yeah, they said you need to turn it up.
Okay, yeah. I'll keep that in mind. I'll turn that up next time. But no, it's yeah, I think Jagmeet nailed it. And I'm very, it's hard right now, right? Because what's happening in the States, it's happening here too. It really is. And like, I don't know if it's worse or better. I don't know, but it's the same broad thing. Police officers have far too much power and far too little accountability in this country.
Lisa said she donated another 100 to the NDP because Jagmeet held his ground.
Lisa, that's great to hear. I did see some people posting donations. I did see that. And I think, like, look, the NDP needs financial support. And like, the party's going to do a better job fundraising. I've been harping at them forever to try to do Bernie Sanders style fundraising. Getting people to donate $500-$600 is fine and good. And there are some NDP members that have the money to do that. But, how an NDP war chest is going to be built is got to be fundamentally through $5, $10, $15, $20 donations. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Mr. Flame says name calling or anything that could be insulting is enough for you to be removed if you don't withdraw it when asked to. It's just the way of Parliament, and the end of the days, sitting out isn't too bad of a time to make your stand.
No, yeah, that's a great point.
And then Talk Block said, if decorum demands that one person politely tolerate another person's impolite contempt, then it isn't decorum, it's the facilitation of racism.
And that was the debate on social media today for a lot of people. That actually kind of encapsulates it. Like, rules are rules, but to what extent do those rules uphold injustice? Like, when are rules because you need them, and when are rules created to actually stifle certain types of debate and discussion? If I actually look this up, we got a super chat by John Barlich, but there was a thing here. Somebody posted it, 106 things Parliament. Okay, so this is from 2011, to be fair, but Parliament's like hundreds of years old. Like, you can't call them certain things. You can't say words like "stoop." You can't call someone stupid. You can't call someone pig. You can't say "worst president of the Privy Council." These are all things people have been kicked out for. People have used separatist in a derogatory term. That's been kicked out for. So these are all words that are seen like this, right? Like,
false.
Yeah, people have been kicked out for calling others Nazis, for instance.
Nefarious.
Yeah, like
wow.
Evil genius, Canadian Mussolini.
B&B gang.
Yeah, for saying somebody's remark was BS.
A cheap political way.
Yeah, calling someone an ass got you kicked out in 1970. A trickster got you kicked out in 1919.
Inspired by 40 Rod whiskey in 1881.
Honorable only by courtesy, being like, I have to call you that because of your position, but I think you're not. A bag of wind got you kicked out in 1878. Here, I'll post a link in the description. So these are just some of the things that people have gotten in trouble in Parliament for calling others, right? That's federal Parliament in Canada up to 2011. Right? So those are just some examples.
That's really
basically, you can't call someone a name, and you can't call someone a liar.
Yeah,
even if they're lying.
Didn't Andrea get kicked out of Parliament for calling someone a liar like 3 weeks ago?
Something like that. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or just if you're seen as acting too inappropriately or something.
Okay, so let's go to John's question. So John with the super chat, he says, "Hey man, I got a question and an opinion on something. One, what is the Trump executive order about with police reform?"
Okay. So basically, Donald Trump put an executive order out, trying to address some of the issues around policing. And so what he's done, and I haven't read every detail of it. But I know the two big things were like a ban on chokeholds and a national database whenever a police officer is found to have done something with misconduct.
A registry of bad
cops. Yeah, so basically, bad cop registry is a great way of putting it.
You almost poked me in the eye when you did that.
Well, that's I won't give you any more compliments. Yeah.
Get out of here.
So, basically, like, the idea is if you ban a certain type of police maneuver, less people will end up passing away like George Floyd or Eric Garner did. And if you have a registry, it will at least hypothetically prevent a police officer from, say, losing a job in, an Alabama police station and then moving to Idaho and then getting another job, right? Right? And so, that's the intent. Now, I don't know if any of this is going to work. I don't think these are things that you shouldn't do. Like, it's not like I think banning these things is a bad thing or not building a database is a good thing. I think these are good, but I don't know if they're nearly enough. Look, lots of jurisdictions have banned chokeholds, and then they still just do them. Right?
Yeah.
Like, they still do them. And the database is good, and it will stop some cases of police officers that do something bad, get fired, or quote-unquote resign, and then end up getting another job the other police officer, station, or department, or county, or whatever, didn't know. But what about for those cases where the new department just doesn't care, or actually likes the fact that their police are a little brutal? Like, that's relying on the fact that those other departments hiring them care about police misconduct. And so, yeah, there's going to be some cases, fair to Trump, right? Like there's going to be a police officer gets fired and tries to get a job in another state where before maybe the records wouldn't be immediately available. and now they don't. But maybe that doesn't matter. And perversely, guys, I wouldn't put it past them. Maybe this database makes some people more likely to get jobs if you have a particularly dirty chief or anti-black county. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, oh, you've roughed up minorities, you're the cop we need. Although that's probably not super common. But I don't think it's enough. And I think part of the problem is like cops seemed okay with this. So right off the bat, my alarms are going off. Any police reform right now that police aren't railing against is bad reform, right? So, worst thing Trump's ever done? No, not by a long shot. It's actually slightly moving things in the right direction, but it's not nearly enough. Not nearly enough.
Oh, shoot.
What?
Jonathan Edward made a comment and I accidentally just deleted it. I don't know how to undo it.
I don't know if we can undelete a comment. Did you put him on timeout?
No.
Okay. Wait. You can read it out.
Jonathan Edward, I didn't mean to do that.
Can you still read it out? It's because it's right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Read it out right now.
Okay, so he says, at Alexander the Great, he is a neolib corporatist that hides behind the veil of virtue signaling and superficial platitudes.
We're talking about Justin, right? Yeah. I assume.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. My finger,
Yeah, sorry about that, Jonathan. Yeah, we weren't deleting that comment for any reason. I think if you're talking about Trudeau, look, the reality is you're right. This is a man that will protest himself. We've talked about this. I think you mentioned it. Brianna brought that up last week, right? Where it's like the man goes to a climate protest and everyone there is like, hey, Justin, stop building the pipelines. And he's like, I love you guys. Thanks for protesting with me. And then he's at the George Floyd solidarity thing. Remember?
Yeah, I deleted all his messages.
Oh, well,
I don't know how I did that.
Okay, well.
Okay.
And so he goes to the George Floyd thing, and he's like kneeling, and everyone's like, "Do something, Justin. You're the prime minister. You can look. Some police in Canada are municipal, but the criminal code in Canada is federal, like strictly federal. You could pass municipal and provincial bylaws, but the criminal code in Canada is federal. If Justin Trudeau wanted, he could decriminalize all drugs. That would weaken the police so much. It's just something Jagmeet Singh supports. He could totally reform the RCMP, which not only is a federal police, but it's often contracted out to cities and provinces. The RCMP is the police basically in small towns.
Well, it's not contracted out to provinces. Provinces have their own provincial police force.
Only 2 of them do. Only Quebec and Ontario, but the other provinces don't. Because they're not, you know what I mean? The RCMP is their provincial police too. So he's done nothing. He's done nothing.
Okay, we have another super chat.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And I hid Edward. How do I unhid Edward? I don't know how I unhide Edward.
Go to one of his comments. Go.
Can somebody else do this for me because I'm not...
Guys, if some of the other moderators, can you guys well, let me see. Can I unhide him? Can you guys unhide Jonathan Edward if you see one of his comments? Bree is really sorry.
Unhide user. I did it.
Oh, okay, good.
Did I do it?
I don't know. We'll see if he makes a comment. But we do have a super chat, so we'll hit that and maybe we'll see it. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So, Jonathan Bartlett with another super chat says, I think that the protest should focus on the economic needs for Black Americans and how these companies like Chase screw them so the Democrats should act.
Joseph says he's unhidden. Woo.
Okay. Sorry
about
that.
Let me see it right here. See it right here. So
he gets a free question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 100%. Okay, so John, I mean, I think I look. There's no question that economic issues play a role here, but it's not just economic, right? Like, there's a combination here. There's the simple fact of the matter is that, you know, if you're poor, yes, you're more likely to be accosted by the police of any background. But if you're poor and racialized, you're likely to be affected. And in many ways, you know, poor white people might not be as affected as middle-class Black people, right? Like there are limitations to purely economic arguments in the here and now. Certainly, when you talk about, like, insofar as there is crime in certain marginalized communities, how much of that is connected to centuries of dispossession, of the inability of these people to get good jobs, of exploitative companies, things like payday loan companies, all of these things. These are perfectly legitimate. But the fact is, like, the issue right now is police killing black men. And in Canada, and like Latinos and Indigenous people. And in Canada, killing black and Indigenous men. Not just men. We know Breonna Taylor, but largely like young men, racialized men are getting mowed down by police. And that is related to economics. It is, but not always. Not always. Sometimes these people are middle class people, right? Right? Simple as that. Like, we remember the black Harvard professor, right, back in Obama, who basically got profiled because he locked himself out of his house and he was trying to get back in. If he was white, people probably just would have believed him. Because he was black, he wasn't believed. Now, the reason we heard about that is because he was a Harvard professor. So I won't deny that class plays a role. But you want to be careful here, because especially when we're not minorities, you want to ensure that you're not trying to dismiss racism as racism, right? Right? You want to make sure you're not dismissing racism as racism, because racism does exist independent of economic issues. Now, I think economic issues are exacerbate racism, 100%. But you don't want to make it look like, oh man, if we got a $15 minimum wage and we banned payday loan things and we did two or three more things, then the police wouldn't be racist. And that's not true. So it's going to be a hybrid approach. It's going to be a hybrid approach.
I was not listening.
And Bernie Sanders, to be fair, basically said, look, like, he has connected these things. He's connected the racism we've been seeing to a need to build more social and political and economic opportunities for marginalized people. And I think you can make a case that, like, hey, look, if you build Medicare for all and you have a federal minimum, a $15 minimum wage, and you do get rid of anti-union legislation, that will build stable communities. But that's going to take time, and that still won't fix racism.
Okay. Do you want a question?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. I am a black cat and I bring the apocalypse says, why is Justin crying? I'm not here to make fun of him. I'm just curious what happened in your picture.
Oh, that's Justin. I don't even know. He's cried a few times for like legitimate reasons or just for whatever. Sometimes it's performative. Sometimes it's serious. But it's meant to be tongue in cheek because Justin Trudeau has put so much actual capital, like money and political capital, into trying to win a UN Security Council seat. And we found out, a few hours ago today that Canada lost that seat to Norway. There's the pool we were in was we're competing with Norway and Ireland for that seat, and only one of them wouldn't get a seat, and we were the one left out. And so a lot of people are saying that Justin Trudeau took a big hit here. Now, I think Brianna and I have both talked about this, and I noted on social media that, like, honestly, this isn't a big deal. Like, the UN Security Council, the other 10 countries on it don't really matter that much.
Didn't we lose it under Harper too?
Yeah, we did, but Harper lost by less votes. As people are saying, Justin Trudeau, despite all of this effort, actually got less support from the UN than Harper did 9 years ago. But the point is, like, this doesn't matter that much, honestly, but it mattered a lot to Justin. And so this is a loss for him, and it's bad news for him and politically because he invested in it. If Justin Trudeau was like, look, we'd love to have this, but, we don't care, and we didn't get it, then maybe people it would be like, people would write a couple articles about it, but we'd all move on. But Trudeau invested so much in this and still lost.
Okay, Craig Adolphi says, I showed the clip to my dad. I showed the clip of Jagmeet talking. I showed my dad the clip of Jagmeet talking about the Bloc MP's response and the brushing motion. He said the Bloc MP knew what he was saying. It's a message to the one POC leader. Yeah,
a lot of people noted that Jagmeet Singh is not only the only person of color, non-white person, to have ever led a federal Canadian party that actually has seats. There are very small parties, not to dismiss them, but there are small parties that might have been led by people of color. Jagmeet's the first party leader to lead a party in the House of Commons and not be white in all of Canadian history at the federal level. And he's the only one right now. And so a lot of people are noting that it's very emblematic of polite Canadian racism, that the only thing worse than racism is telling people that they're racist.
Yeah. So Matthew Chambers says, even my Conservative MP admits what the Bloc said during the election was racist.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, that was an interesting thing. Now, the NDP is a little bit at fault here, too. The NDP, the Liberals, the Conservatives, all of those parties basically agree that the Quebec law is racist. But no one wants to really go ahead and issue a federal challenge through the Supreme Court. They're careful because Quebec has a lot of votes, and they're also worried about backlash that, if you attack it through the federal government, it'll just make Quebecers dig in their heels. So it's hard. It's a really hard position. The law is unquestionably racist, and in my view, it's unconstitutional. Because Section 7 and Section 15 of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, sort of like a Bill of Rights, guarantees you equal protection under the law as it relates to your relationship with the government on the basis of religion, ethnicity, things like that. And I would argue that this is a clear violation of Section 15, 100%. Now, in Canada, provinces can override unconstitutional laws and keep them in with the notwithstanding clause. But the law has to be unconstitutional first to use that clause.
Well, and Quebec never signed the Constitution.
They didn't, but they're still in. But they do routinely, for instance, Bill 101. Basically, in Quebec, they have a law that makes it so that businesses have to put French wording on all their signs and menus, and the French has to be bigger and all that. That's actually unconstitutional because the government is imposing speech on private businesses, which is not necessarily allowed. But though it's unconstitutional, Quebec, every 5 years, as it does, renews it with the notwithstanding clause. Mm-hmm. So that's an unconstitutional law. But in Canada, we recognize that Parliament should be supreme, and so things in the Constitution can be overridden by legislatures. Mm-hmm. Whether you like that or not is a debate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have John Barlich, and then I see the question from Edward. Jonathan Edward just came in. So John Barlich says, with the super chat, hey, the Supreme Court decision regarding LGBTQ plus was the only good thing to come out of 2020.
I mean, I don't know if it's the only thing. I guess I'd have to think of some other things.
Well, what other good thing has happened this year?
Jeez, I don't know.
Well, explain what.
Well, Bernie won Nevada. That was pretty fun.
Okay.
There was like 3 weeks where we were winning. That was nice.
Explain.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Okay, so basically what happened a couple days ago, and somewhat of a surprise, the Supreme Court in the U.S. basically said that you can't ban people from a job if they on the basis of the fact that they are gay or lesbian or transgender or anything like that. So currently the way it works is, the way it worked before is the Civil Rights Act protected things like not getting fired because you're black or because you're a woman, but it did not include being gay or being transgender. And so people were getting explicitly fired or discriminated against because of their gender identity or their sexual orientation. Mm-hmm. Now, there was a 6-3 decision on a court that's 5-4 conservative because John Roberts, who's seen as like a conservative but a moderate-leaning one, voted with the 4 progressives. They're not all progressives, but, the 4 liberals, if you will, on the court. But so did Neil Gorsuch, one of Trump's appointees. And he actually wrote the majority decision. So this was good to see. Now, as I noted in my video on this, which not a lot of people watched. I don't know why. I'm just saying. I put it out late in the day. Everyone else had already said what I said. But the fact is, this only protects you in explicit cases of explicit cases of racism or homophobia or transphobia.
Racism, discrimination.
Discrimination. If somebody says to you, hey, Joan, I'm firing you because you have a wife. Because you're a lesbian. Bi, then yeah, now that's illegal. It wasn't like 3 days ago, but now it's illegal, right? But much like with any other thing, a boss can go up to you and say, hey, Joan, how's the family? Blah, 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 blah. Look, you're not a good fit here. You're not a good fit. The company's changing. You don't fit our corporate vision. You're not a good fit. And there's not much you can do about that. There's not much you can do. Brianna, as somebody who works in a labor environment, knows that it's difficult to prove those sorts of things. It's difficult to prove that somebody was let go because of their gender or things like that.
Sure, but there is a higher standard in Canada about not firing people for those things.
No, and here's the thing, about not firing people, period.
Yeah.
And so in the United States, there's the at-will employment system, where basically anybody can be fired at any time without cause. That's not a thing in Canada, really. Workers have better protections in Canada. And if when you're in a union, especially in Canada and the United States, there's better protections. So my concern is, I don't know how effective this law is going to be. Mm-hmm. Now the homophobes are just going to say you're not a good fit. I guess if you have a big enough company and say you have 100 workers, 5 of them are LGBTQ, and all 5 of the LGBTQ workers get laid off because they're not good fits, quote unquote, then maybe you could make a case, but that's still not necessarily proof, right? So it's good news, but it's not the silver bullet people think it's going to be. It's not. And there's still a debate about whether or not companies and employers with legitimate religious objections will still be able to do this. And the court didn't make a definitive ruling. So if a business has a religious affiliation or something, it may well still be allowed to fire people because they're gay explicitly, right? So we don't know yet.
But it is good.
It's definitely a good decision. It's incredibly important. Incredibly. But again, the biggest barrier in the United States is that when it's so easy to fire workers for any reason, it's especially easy to discriminate against the most marginalized. Because look, if you're in a unionized environment, or even just an environment that requires employers show cause, like if you go after a person clearly because they're gay, a union steward could say, look, why are you firing this person? They say, well, they're just not a good fit. They say, well, that's not good enough. Were they late? Did they do bad work? If they did bad work or were they were late, did they get warnings? Did they get verbal warnings, written warnings? Was there a plan to do these things? And on and on and on. And then if they don't have those things, it's not a guarantee you'll be able to fight off the claim, that you'll be able to prove it, but the evidence will be there that clearly they haven't gotten enough proof to fire them, right?
Potentially.
So what do you think about that? Like, Brianna knows more. Like, what do you think? Like, how much value do you think these provisions have in a non-union environment? Is there
I think a worker's best protection is a union, and without a union, who's going to advocate for you, even if the laws are there?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
You can get a lawyer and you can sue them.
Or go to the Human Rights Tribunal here in Ontario, right?
Sure,
yeah.
But you still need a lawyer at the Human Rights Tribunal.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
And you still wait 3 years to hear your case, and if you don't have that lawyer, no one helps you prepare for it. So, unless you have someone to advocate for you, how successful are you going to be in having your grievances aired? Probably not.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I know we had a question from Jonathan Edwards, right?
Yes, I have it here.
Okay, yeah.
I've been waiting.
And then we'll get to John's question, his super chat after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Edward, he says, my question, off topic, but what is your honest opinion of Jordan Peterson? I'm not a fan, and I'm curious to see what you both think.
I'm also not a fan. Honestly, he's sort of out of the... not to be glib, but isn't he almost dead? Literally, he was in the hospital or something. Somebody give me an update.
That has nothing to do with Jonathan's question.
Well, no, but is I haven't been thinking about him a lot. The last thing I thought about him, because he was big in the discourse 3 years ago when he the biggest threat to Western civilization was people wanting to use pronouns that weren't assigned to them at birth. And then, like, him and his daughter started a carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Where they only ate meat. I don't know if they have exceptions, but it was billed as, like, you only eat meat. Like, no vegetables.
Because it was against, like, soy boys.
Yeah,
right?
but or something like it unlocks the potential of your body. It's like you only eat meat.
But I think the real, like, tragic thing about Jordan Peterson is that, like, early in his career, he was extremely, like,
I mean, the guy...
influential. And, like, he had some, like...
Yeah.
good ideas, wasn't he? And then he kind of just went off the deep end crazy.
Well, in his youngest days, he was an NDPer in Alberta as a teenager. Like, he was part of the youth wing of the NDP back in the original Notley days, the Grant Notley days. And then he went on to the University of Toronto and was a very accomplished psychologist. And, you know, had tenure and I believe got that work...
He still has tenure.
Yeah, and got that work legitimately. Like, a few years ago, he went off on the pronoun thing and then also went through these talks about how the solution to our problems is compulsory monogamy. Basically forcing women to settle down with one man.
Because that always is a good idea.
Yeah, because women have too much sexual power, and women now can choose to have sex with whoever they want, and that sounds fine and dandy, but too many men are being left without partners because 20% of the men are sleeping with 80% of the women, and so the only way to fix this is to force women to lock themselves down to one man. And of course, he'll say that, like, oh, we're misinterpreting it, but it sounds something like ISIS would do, really, like, if we're being honest, right? It does.
I guess you're already demonetized.
Yeah. Right? Like, so I am not a fan of Jordan Peterson. I don't know his scholarly work. I don't know his work, but I think he's a dangerous voice. And I think much like Faith Goldie, Lauren Southern, the roots of some of the most horrific things we've seen in Canada and around the world, they inspired them. Christchurch, Quebec City, and on and on. Those things don't happen in part without some of Canada's alt-right voices.
Yeah. So that was a good question.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And really sorry, Jonathan, again, that I deleted all your questions and put you on, I don't know, something where you were invisible, but I really am sorry about that. And I'll really try hard not to do that to you anymore.
Well, so people say, so Jonathan says here, I heard that he was in poor health, Christo Aivalis, you're not just making things up. Jonathan Edwards says he went to Russia to be put on a medically induced coma to cure his benzo addiction. I did hear about him having substance abuse problems, and I remember people talking about that. And, look, I don't...
That's besides the
Yeah,
point.
like...
But thank you for the update.
People have skeletons in their closet. Obviously, I'm not going to judge him on that necessarily, although... he would definitely be the kind of person to judge others for those things. Mm-hmm. So,
okay, so Jonathan Barlich has a super chat, and he says, "What is your opinions on reparations for What is your opinion on reparations for slavery?"
I mean, I'm in support, at least broadly. I mean, I don't know, because like people have a bunch of different views on what reparations are and what they're not and how they'll work. I can see some value for it. Obviously, it's going to be challenging who gets reparations, who doesn't. How do you determine communities? There are African Americans that don't have direct legacies to slavery. Do they get the benefit? Does Barack Obama, for instance? I don't know, because look, at the end of the day, his father is much like my father, a post-World War II immigrant. He does not have that connection to the peculiar institution of American history, but his wife does. So what about his children? Are they half included? What about mixed race children? What about children that are so mixed race that they are functionally, in a social sense, passing permanently as non-African American? I think the way you do it is the reparations have to be done socially, right? I don't think you're going to find the most success necessarily doing it through, like, say, a check to each and every African American person, although maybe some payments would help. I think that, if it's about investing in affected communities, you, one, can maybe get more bang for your buck, and then two, you get around at least partially this debate about who merits reparations and who doesn't. Mm-hmm. But fundamentally, Brianna and I are just, we're totally white people. So I mean, the like in general, I'm supportive. I'd have questions like anybody else, but I would think, John, the best solution there would be to go look up Black creators on YouTube, Black writers, and see what their views on reparations are. And I'm sure some will oppose it, some will support it, some might just want, the value of all, like they want $5 trillion divided evenly, but for every Black American, or some others might want specific investments into schools and communities. I'm not sure.
I think the answers to those questions have to come from like the communities that have been impacted not only like directly by their heritage of having ancestors who were slaves, but also about the association of Blackness. That comes with that, right?
With the slavery. And I think, and that makes a great point, right? So, I'm not sure. I can't say more than that. One thing to note here is, we got a comment here. I forget who said it, sorry, but they were saying Jordan Peterson sounds like an incel, an involuntarily celibate. And he's not. I mean, he's married, he has a wife, he has a daughter. I don't know if he has more kids. But, like, the reality is that, like, a big chunk of his audience are. And he is seen as inspiring a lot of these incels, because one of the arguments you've heard from some incels is that, a lot of them, ironically, are very supportive of capitalism and the free market. There's not very many socialist incels, so far as I can tell. But they're very much like, look, the solution is you gotta take away women's freedom. Get rid of birth control. Get rid of pay equity. Mm-hmm. Get rid of gender discrimination protections. Force women back into the home. And if you force them to get pregnant, they will by design be more likely to settle with one man. And that way you won't have a scenario where you have all these lonely guys and you have a few guys that are monopolizing the women, and these women will make these men happy. And honestly, like, yeah, his work has sort of influenced incel theory, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's interesting. Okay, so Alexander the Great says, apparently the U.S. was set to have a universal healthcare system very similar to Germany's, but it was scrapped in the lead up to World War I.
I mean, I'm not sure about that. I know that in Canada and in the U.S., a lot of countries, there's always been politicians that have said our goal is to create a healthcare system because they know how popular it'll be with regular people. I'm not an expert on U.S. history, especially that far back. But to my knowledge, I don't know how serious that plan would have been. The U.S. government was very small at that point. Most governments were. Before the war, often the biggest departments beyond the military would be the post office. In fact, in Canada for a while, the post office was the biggest part of the government, even bigger than the military, back in the 1800s. Canada was a more sparse country, and the British did some of our military stuff for us. But the point is, like, the debates around universal health care in North America become stronger, I think, after World War I. A lot of soldiers come back, obviously, with injuries. The Spanish flu gives people a greater sense of the need for public health. Cities are becoming more and more packed. The Industrial Revolution in Canada doesn't happen in the same way that it does in England at the same pace. It happens later because our country's younger and more sparse. So, I would say the rise of left-wing parties makes it a more central demand. But I, to my knowledge, I don't think the U.S. was that close. Although, you would make the case that one of the barriers to a truly universal system was after the war, or during World War II, employers couldn't raise wages a certain amount, even when there was not enough workers, because of wage freezes. And so the solution for some of the employers was to give out perks, give out side benefits, which had effective economic value, but technically weren't wages, right? And so one of the things they did is they increased the availability of health and dental and medical insurance and all these sorts of things. And after the war, it became, as the more and more white people, especially white people in the middle and upper classes and working class people fortunate enough to be in unions, got health care. And that's and before the universal system could be built. Mm-hmm. And then now there's like you have this hodgepodge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, Bluebell, if you said they were that close, I mean, look.
Apparently, Eleanor Roosevelt, they say a little bit further up. We were set up before the war to have a universal healthcare system. It was being championed by Eleanor Roosevelt.
Before World War One? Because I would say before World War II, I could see it. Before World War II, yes. Because by that point, in Canada, they were pushing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, you ready for another question?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, this is a comment. Lisa Hildebrandt says, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney just called Rachel Notley a liar in the legislature, but didn't get kicked out.
Yeah, I mean, the UCP is awful, right? I mean, the UCP is awful. They have a big majority in that house. And look, the speaker, the way it works in Canada is our parliament is, the prime minister sits in the parliament. So we don't have it's not like the president that's separate from the House and the Senate. And our Senate doesn't really matter. Like, it's sort of like...
the Senate is the sober second
Yeah, it's
thought.
The sober second thought, but it's also
like,
the protectorate of the rich, right?
It's the me to you.
Yeah. Yeah, to a certain degree. That's maybe fair. But the point is, the speaker is a member of the House that's elected from one of the parties, but they're elected to be neutral. And so, the speaker has to act neutrally, but of course, they might not always. And so, the speaker of the Alberta legislature, who is a member of the United Conservative Party, maybe just wouldn't hold his leader to the same account that he would hold Rachel Notley. I'm not saying that's the case here, necessarily, but because I haven't seen the clip, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay. Lovely Pariah says, I adore Bernie and his policies overall, but he occasionally momentarily reverts to old school socialism.
Read that one again.
I think in response to, Bernie gets bogged down. Joseph said that Bernie gets bogged down in economics and sometimes doesn't engage with the social issues as he should. Yeah, I mean,
just to clarify, Bluebell did clarify, World War II. Yeah, then in that case, I 100% believe you. It was going to be part of FDR's New Deal. And the left in Canada at the time, we weren't in power like FDR was, but the CCF at the time and unions were pushing hard for a universal public healthcare system. And that's one of the reasons Tommy Douglas won in 1944 during the war. But they were pushing for it before. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me. World War I was very different. The world was very different just 30 years earlier. It really was a very wild historical time. Yeah, I mean, okay, well, it depends what you mean by old school socialist, because you got to clarify. Old school socialism doesn't necessarily just mean economics, right? For instance, the socialists, the CCF in Canada, were always also the party of civil liberty. They were the party that wanted to welcome in Jewish refugees before World War II, many of whom we rejected and then died in the Holocaust. That was the party that wanted to give Japanese and Chinese Canadians the right to vote when they didn't have it. The NDP was the first party to support gay marriage. So Bernie Sanders on a lot of issues is not just economic. Remember, Bernie supported gay rights when being gay was still basically illegal. He was at these Burlington Pride parades in the 70s, right? Bernie Sanders supported gay rights when you lost votes for supporting gay rights, not gained them, right? So Bernie Sanders has almost always been a social and economic progressive, right? To be clear. But I do agree that Bernie's wrong on the question of defunding the police. And I disagree with him that you can solve this by giving the police more resources. He's wrong here. And I think what this whole ordeal has shown us is that, Bernie Sanders, it really was not me, us. Hashtag not me, us, where it's Bernie said, look, yeah, I'm running to be president, and hopefully I will be, but the movement is what really matters. And I'm just one guy maybe playing a big role in this movement. And maybe a lot of the non-Bernie people thought we were a cult. They thought the Bernie Sanders people were cultists, right? Bernie told us to jump off a bridge, we all would.
I mean, I've often wanted to start a cult.
Yeah, Brianna has said to make money, we'd start a cult.
Joke. That's a joke.
Yeah. But to be clear, look, the the reality from my perspective is that we've moved on beyond Bernie. We're not making videos about Bernie that much anymore here on this channel. Same on like the other channels. We still talk about him now and then when he endorses progressives or something. But we've moved on. Like I haven't canceled Bernie, but like Bernie's wrong about defunding. We're not just going to stick with Bernie because he's Bernie. I think that shows that the left in the United States is not just a Bernie flash in the pan, but it has gone beyond him. And I think that's a good thing. Like, nothing but love for Bernie Sanders. I think he's going to be seen as America's Tommy Douglas.
Well, and Lefty Mind says Tommy Douglas was an old school socialist and a badass.
Yeah, and again, a man who fought for the marginalized, a man who gave women gave women equal rights in the workplace like they never had before. The first government in Canada to pass a human rights bill to guarantee equal treatment before the law, regardless of race or religion. Now, of course, racism and bigotry still existed and sexism, but his government was the first to even try to stop it. Before Tommy Douglas, our governments were racist and proud, right? They were like, the NDP was the first. Smokey's causing a bit of a ruckus.
That's because somebody didn't clean his desk off.
Yeah, it's my fault actually, but he's causing a bit of a ruckus. But look, the fundamental reality is that Bernie and Tommy Douglas, they're very similar in some ways, and I think Bernie's going to go down as a great guy, but we've moved on beyond him right now, in some ways. Yeah, Bernie's too moderate. Bernie was the compromise. Bernie's not the dream. Bernie's the compromise. And maybe people don't get that, but he's the compromise. Right?
Well, to be fair to all your viewers, that is not something that you have ever said.
No,
before.
I've said that. I have said Bernie is the compromise.
And to someone who wrote Christo cult, no, Brie cult. The cult is my idea. I'm the leader. I'm the leader, not Christo.
Yeah, I'm just like the pretty face on the front.
No, I'm also the pretty face on the front. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm going to read these next two, and then...
Stephen Colbert cheese. Smoky bad.
Smoky, well...
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Christo bad for not moving his pop cans.
Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, we're out of pop, by the way. I put an order in.
So my name is Hello, super chat, and no question, just a little dancing pear with an exercise band on his head, so very, very cute. I appreciate that a lot. And then Maria Vargard says, what is the difference between a libertarian and a liberal? That is a good question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave you there.
Okay.
And
can you give me some water, please? Thank you.
Answer this question. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Some people are saying that the audio cut out briefly. I heard that too, but I think it's back. Sorry about that, guys. So first, my name is Hello. I love the dancing pear. It is fantastic. I love those little stickers. So thank you for your support and for bringing a little bit of fun to this. And Maria, I mean, the difference I would say is that it depends what you mean by liberal. Okay, so under the American definition of liberal and the popular definition, liberal means somebody on the left. Somebody on usually the center left. So Nancy Pelosi, quote unquote, I know she's not, she's she's a right winger, center right, whatever. But the Democratic Party is seen as liberal. They are on the left economically and socially. In the traditional definition, it was usually somebody kind of like a centrist, center right. Libertarians are basically economically conservative and socially progressive. Right? So for instance, libertarians will say, look, we need to end the war on drugs. We need to ensure that the police are not brutalizing people. We need to ensure, this is hypothetical, libertarians, I've noticed, only care about some of these things some of the time, if it affects them. I haven't seen a lot of libertarians out for George Floyd, because a lot of libertarians are actually just white nationalists, if we're being honest. But in practicality, that's the definition. So they'll be no more war on drugs. We should have, the military should be smaller. all of these sorts of things. But then they'll also say no minimum wage. Oh, we got a fortune cookie. Brianna's going to read. Is this your fortune?
Yeah, this is my fortune.
Okay, so
cookie.
guys,
So read me that and then tell me I don't make a perfect cult leader.
Okay, Brianna's fortune is 5, 7, 12, 15, 22.
No, read the letters.
Okay, those are the lottery numbers. If you guys win the lottery with those numbers, you have to share half of it in a super chat. Just FYI. Okay, you are both sociable and charming.
Perfect cult leader.
Okay, yes.
Not Christo.
So, yeah. Weirdbeard, is this the Antifa meetup? Weirdbeard, I know your joke, but no, but maybe also yes. But no, so I would say like a libertarian type is going to be like, I want my drugs, but your workers can't have minimum wages. Whereas a liberal would be like, you know, we have to become more socially and economically progressive. That's my understanding. Now, some people will also say like there's also socialist libertarians, that there be both like left wing on social and economic issues. But that term's not really used too much, like libertarian socialism. So libertarians are generally considered right wingers, and liberals are considered center left. Craig Adolph says, sorry, could Brianna clarify cult or no cult? Craig asked, cult or no cult?
Am I in charge?
Well, yeah, Craig, is Brianna in charge? If yes, then yeah, she'd be pro cult. If no, probably no cult.
Yes,
Yeah,
that is my
yeah,
answer.
okay. Yeah, like here in Canada, I would say Peggy Russell kind of nails it here. Peggy, member of the channel, always does great helping to share my videos. I appreciate that, Peggy. Basically says that the people that have run for libertarians in Canada are generally conservatives on many of the issues that matter. Sometimes, hypothetically, they'll be social progressives, but more often than not, they're just hardcore anti-government, anti-worker people. Like, that's my view. Most libertarians in practice. In theory, they you know what I mean? And it's also like, so for instance, they'll do things like say, look, we have to make sure that the government doesn't get in the way of business. And also I'm against racism, but they will oppose any legislation that would stop companies from firing people because of their race, because that impinges on the free market. Capitalists should be free to discriminate. You know, things like that. John Bartledge asks, hey, with states in the U.S. legalizing weed, which is the best way for the U.S. to legalize marijuana so it's not a winner-take-all system? This is a good question. I'm not an expert, so I'll just kind of give a brief viewpoints, but I think, like, you know, reading up on this is crucial. One of the concerns is that this is being legalized, and the people that are going to make off like gangbusters are going to be already wealthy people that have, like, the capital to invest right now. Right? The capital to invest right now. And basically, most of those people are going to be white folks, white, like upper middle class folks. And so some people have said it's unjust that black men, black people, Hispanic people have gone to jail often for a long time for exercising in a business that's now legal, watching people that, you know, weren't punished for doing the same thing make millions, right? Billions, maybe. So I think, yeah, you have to look at ensuring that minority communities can have a stake in the process. I think that's important. The enforcement of anti-marijuana laws was racist, so I don't think it's inappropriate to ensure direct reparations, in a sense, to ensure that black people, Hispanic people, and other affected minorities have the ability to own these businesses. And I would say, my argument, now, the United States, you guys don't have the same kind of laws. I think it shouldn't be private. It should be through a crown corporation. Here in Ontario, we have the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. All marijuana sales, from my perspective, everywhere should be owned by the people. That's my view. You know, I'm a bit of a like I don't like the Alberta alcohol model where like private businesses can sell like liquor stores. I like the, you know, liquor is sold by the government through the commission, and so marijuana should be the same. That's my view. And that way, it's not a winner-take-all system. The public generates the money that's reinvested in the system. And the LCBO is a big moneymaker for the province of Ontario. Jonathan Young Cowling says, are anarcho-socialists considered libertarians? See, this is the argument. When I think of libertarians, okay, like, when I think, let me see if I can pull this up. I'm getting more confident, guys, doing these the things here. So if I pull up the political compass, let me pull this up. Pull. Okay, so if I just pull up like an example here. Okay, so let me know if like you guys can see this. Okay, so here's an example of the compass. Now, a lot of people have been very critical of the compass, right? But let me just close this right here. So if you guys can see that, let me know. It should be viewable. And basically, what that is right there is on the left here, that's like economics. Left, right. Up there is libertarian versus authoritarian. So just very simply, it's like, do you want to tax the rich more? The more you say you want to tax the rich, you'll move leftward. The more you say you want like a flat tax, or you don't want to tax anybody, or you want to give money to the rich through tax system, you go rightward. Now, if you say, do you support gay marriage? If you don't support gay marriage, you would move up towards authoritarian. If you didn't support gay marriage, you'd move down towards libertarian, right? So, basically, in the definition, libertarian is generally somebody that supports freedom and civil liberty and things like that, whereas it's not necessarily the domain of one particular ideology. But the understanding of libertarianism right now is that, frankly, it applies to people who are on the right. So if you look at these quadrants, right here in this corner, up here, that is like right. Somebody that's right on economics and on social issues. That's where a lot of conservatives are. That's where a lot of Republicans are, for instance. Libertarians, as we like what are called libertarians, will often find themselves in this area, right here. They'll find themselves down here because, yeah, they're right-wing on economic issues, but they might be centrist or progressive on social issues. A lot of communists, like Stalinist type communists, might find themselves in some ways in this area because they're left-wing on economic issues, but they might not support all the civil liberties. They might agree that banning the free press is something they want to see. And a lot of people down here are more your traditional, they're people that are socialist on economics and like they're progressive on social values. So they might be like, they want strong unions, they want public ownership, they want economic planning, but also people should be allowed to marry who they want to marry and things like that, right? That's the basic understanding of the model. Did that make sense to people? People might have saw Smokey, I think. If you guys saw him, let me know. Oh yeah, I'm not saying the political compass is great. I'm not. But what I'm suggesting is like that was just a kind of brief example of what you might to take a look at for it, how it works. So yeah, would you say that they are libertarians under the current definition? No. Libertarian under the way 90% of people understand it, is a right-wing ideology. But lots of people in an academic context call themselves libertarian socialists, and they would be the people that are in the green quadrant. The further down you go towards the corner in the green quadrant would be more libertarian socialist, as opposed to quote-unquote authoritarian socialism, right? That's the different there. Yeah, and Lovely Pariah is right. Look, there's some value to this. It gets people thinking about it. It's like, it's not, the test is flawed, but this gets people thinking about ideology as more than just one directional. And like in some places you need to add a third one. So for instance, in Quebec, you might have left, right, authoritarian, libertarian, and then nationalist versus non-nationalist, or a federalist versus separatist. So you might need a 3-dimensional chart, depending on what you're tracking. Right? You know what I mean? Like things like that. So these are like some of the issues you look at, right? Cat Lady says 3% of NDPers preferred Trump to Trudeau, but I believe 2% of Liberals did. Craig Adolph actually told me on Twitter, the margin of error of that poll was 3%. So technically, it could have been somebody that slipped when they entered the data. They might have hit the wrong button. So on some of these things, you could see, you could be a libertarian socialist, but the people don't refer to that in common parlance. Libertarianism in the North American understanding is people that are on the right, but also want weed. That's libertarianism. Yeah, Olivia, you're right. That's a great point too. Like, do you take nationalism as different than separatism? That's a great point. Some people are Quebec nationalists, but not separatists. And some people are separatists, but not nationalists. Right? Yeah. So, that's one of my things. I don't know. One thing I've maybe wanted to do, maybe I'll do it on a separate stream, or whenever I get some time to do Twitch. I want to do Twitch. Like, I want to do more regular streaming, but until daycare is open and I can actually do a 9 to 5 day, I just don't have time. But would you guys want to see me do the political compass? Like, I know it's just for kicks. Like, I know Kal Kalinske did it. People found that really interesting. I wouldn't mind doing the compass. I haven't done it in years, so I don't remember the questions or anything. Yeah, we have syntaxes. It's syntaxes, but it's more than that. A lot of provinces, areas, they'll have a syntax on things like cigarettes, but cigarettes can be sold in convenience stores. In Ontario, now beer and wine are a bit different, but in Ontario, all hard liquor is sold through the publicly owned commission. Private industry can't sell those things unless there's probably exceptions for artisans and stuff, but like you can't go buy Smirnoff or Bacardi or Captain Morgan or whatever at the liquor store, at the grocery store. You can't do it in Canada or in Ontario. Some provinces are different. Okay, so people do like that. Okay, we're gonna do that sometime. I'll set up to do that. Either on maybe we'll do it on like a Wednesday night. Maybe if like I feel like the week is slow, we'll do like a political compass stream, and we could do that. Yeah, okay. People are interested. That's great. We'll definitely do that. I'll talk to Bree. Maybe we could do like a couples one and see where Bristow as a hypothetical merged human would do it. But we'll see. Bree and I actually have a lot of the same opinions, but it'll be interesting to see where we disagree on a political compass. Yeah, like the Shauna, I mean, that's like to be fair, not every Canadian province does it that way. So in like Alberta, as example, they allow you to, like, they have private liquor stores. And then in Quebec, they have, you could sell beer and wine in convenience stores, and that's not always, and you can in Ontario, but it's much more closed off. You have to get special permits. And in some provinces, there's no liquor sales at all, beer and wine included, but the government commissions. Exceptions might be like a winery is allowed to sell its own wine directly to consumers. Like you go to a winery, but beyond that, you got to go to the LC, the commission. Yeah, Bristow's a common name. Friends have made it up for us. Bristow, yeah. Bruce Banner, we need to understand our cult leaders' beliefs. Ooh. Okay. I don't know. This is already spinning out of control, guys. Bree will be authoritarian. Bree's not an authority. Well, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Actually, we'll see. Maybe Bree and I will do the compass together one of these days. Maria asks, and again with the support, thank you so much, Maria. Is the Prime Minister similar to the Speaker of the House here in the USA? Not quite. So the way there's some similarities, but there's differences. So the Prime Minister in their function is most like the President. The way the Canadian system works is our ruler, ordained by God, this Queen Elizabeth II, long may she reign. I'm not a monarchist, but I'm just saying. Queen Elizabeth is our godly appointed queen. She rules us as the head of the Canadian state. She technically, basically the Prime Minister picks, but the Queen actually does it, picks a Governor General. That person is technically like the head of state in Canada. They're the closest thing to the president in a constitutional sense, but they're basically a figurehead 99.9% of the time. Then you have the Senate. We have a Senate, but it's appointed and it can block legislation, but it rarely does. And so pretty much all of our politics happens in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister does not run for the office of Prime Minister itself, at least not legally. So the way it works is the leaders of all the parties are chosen by the members of that party. And they run for a seat in the House of Commons, wherever they are in the country. So the equivalent would be, get rid of your president. You don't have a president anymore. Your Senate is a figurehead. You don't really have a Senate either. You have your House of Commons, your House of Representatives. The two party leaders run for a district. And then the Prime Minister is chosen by the individual members of Parliament. Now, technically, they can choose anyone. They can choose anyone in that room or any other Canadian. You just have to have the support of the House of Commons. But in practical reality, what happens is the biggest 3 or 4 parties have leaders, and those leaders run for Prime Minister. Right? So, Justin Trudeau is simply elected by the members of Papineau, which is a riding in Montreal. Those are the only people that directly vote for Justin Trudeau to be Prime Minister. Right? And then he is selected. Now, our Speaker of the House is different in some ways. Our Speaker of the House is more a moderator of debate. And they are elected also by the members of the House, much like the Speaker is elected in the U.S. Like Nancy Pelosi was elected by the members of the House of Representatives. But they're seen as a neutral party, whereas the Speaker of the House in the United States is clearly a member of a party. So I would say that our Prime Minister is more similar to the President, in his practical reactions. But I guess our system is more akin to a European model. A lot of European models will have that when they got rid of their monarchies, right? When they got rid of their monarchies, a lot of European countries created a presidential position. And the president is essentially a figurehead. They're often elected, but they're a figurehead. And they don't do very many things. And so that's the president of the country. But the actual power is rested in the Prime Minister. So in Greece, for instance, my dad's from Greece, the Greek president doesn't really have much power. The Greek Prime Minister has most of the power, right? Some other European countries do this as well. And so the head of state is the president. The head of the government is the Prime Minister. So in Canada, the head of state is the Queen through her representative, the Governor General, and the head of the government is Justin Trudeau, the current Prime Minister. Jonathan asking if we're going to have an election this year. You know, I'm pretty sure we won't, Jonathan, but I'm not 100 on that. So for those who don't know, in Canada, the way it works is we don't have set election dates like in the States. Like you guys know, like every 4 years, there's an election for president. And if the president dies early or something, their vice president takes over. So every 4 years on the dot, there's a U.S. election for president, right? In Canada, the way it works is that there has to be an election once every 5 years at the latest, right? But you can have more elections in between then. So generally what happens in an election is the parties all run, and then there are 338 seats in our parliament. And if a party wins, one party wins more than half the seats, which does happen. It happened in 2015 and 2011. So now you got to win 170 seats to control the legislature, basically. You win, you have a majority government, which means that your party on its own can pass legislation because you have more votes than all the other parties put together. Right? So and so usually those governments will last anywhere from 3.5 to 5 years. Some provinces, the federal government has like a Fair Elections Act, which try to bring Canada into a 4-year cycle, but those things aren't set in stone. You can just overrule them easily. The election is usually called about 4 years later in those cases. But in a minority parliament, I am indeed wearing pants. In a minority parliament, which is where the leading party on its own does not have more than half the seats, a government can technically fall at any time. If the government puts forward a piece of legislation that's deemed government legislation and it loses, then the government falls. And then the governor general will have two choices. They can, one, ask the next biggest party, can you form a government? So if Trudeau's government fell, the governor general could go to Andrew Scheer and say to him, and it won't because he's an interim leader now anyway, but you could say to him, look, Mr. Scheer, can you form a government? And then he would say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. And then they could technically go to the third biggest party, but the third party and fourth party are much smaller than the biggest two. So they would likely at that point dissolve parliament and then have another election. So right now, technically the government could fall any day. But with the scenario as it is, I don't see it as likely, Jonathan, because there's a few things. One, the current government is popular. So none of right now, and if the polls are to be believed, the Liberals would win a huge majority because the Conservatives are tanking right now. The NDP, Greens, and Bloc are all kind of where they were on election day, but the Conservatives are tanking. So everybody knows that if there's an election today, the Liberals win a majority. They win a majority. And so the opposition parties don't want to pull the government down right now, let alone the fact that some of them need to build up their they don't have enough money to run an election. And the Conservatives don't have their full-time leader yet. So none of the opposition parties are willing to go through an election right now. And the Liberals, although they would be willing normally, can't look like they're the ones that caused the election to happen, because if they do, the public will blame them and they will lose all of the goodwill they've built up. And so I think you're more likely to see an election in the springtime. That's when I think you're going to see an election. If the Liberals are extending the CERB to October, then my sense is that we need it at the very least until October. And until there's a vaccine, like there's no setup for mail-in voting. And so until there's a vaccine, I don't see it. I don't see the people pulling the trigger. I think we're going to get a spring election. I think so. Arlene says, so in Canada, do you still pledge allegiance to the Queen? I mean, I don't know if the technical term is pledge allegiance, but you have to, I think, say something to the Queen. When you take an oath of office, it still mentions the Queen in it, but I don't know if you have to make that claim. In certain parts of the country, God Save the Queen is still sung regularly. In the Ontario legislature, they still sing God Save the Queen in addition to the national anthem. at least some of the time. So as a child, I do remember we didn't sing it every day, but we used to every day in school we sang the national anthem, "Oh Canada," "Oh Canada," that. But we also sang every once in a while. We sang "God Save the Queen," right? So we are officially our own country, Cat Lady, but I mean, there are limitations. The Queen's on our money, but the Queen is our head of state, ordained by God. She is our head of state by virtue of the fact that she is the head of the Anglican Church. Canada is, in a sense, very, very loosely and only on paper, a theocracy. Same thing with, right? Like, the Queen rules by the divine right of God through his church founded by Henry VIII. That's where her legitimacy comes from. Don't forget, the Queen, our Queen as well, she is crowned by the Archbishop of Canterbury whenever a new king or queen becomes king or queen. Right? We used to sing... Vaudry. No, not the Sex Pistols, "God Save the Queen." No, we used to sing, and I don't know about you guys, but when I went to school, like high school and like up until high school, and I graduated from high school in 2005, every day, like there'd be like morning announcements by the principal or whatever. Every day we would sing "Oh Canada" every day. So, yeah, we are in a sense that, so the Queen is our head of state, technically. I grew up in New Brunswick. I grew up in New Brunswick, so my high school was in Moncton. So I don't know if every province is different. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. Yeah, Cat Lady sang "Oh Canada" daily. We sang "Oh Canada." We only sang "Oh Canada." Yeah, it's like I don't think we sang it as part of the national anthem. It's just we sang "God Save the Queen" a lot as a kid. I don't know if it was like whenever we had like an assembly or something. I remember singing "God Save the Queen" a lot as a kid. It wasn't every day like "Oh Canada" though. Like "Oh Canada" is before every sporting event, every like major thing. It's like you sing "Oh Canada." Like for those who don't watch sports, before every Blue Jays game, we always sing the Canadian and American national anthem, one for each team. Throwing back the apple. Is that what it says? Sorry. Yeah. Have you and David Dole ever met in person? We haven't actually. We haven't met in person. I'd love to meet him. I mean, it's like he's in Toronto, and I was when I first started doing this, I was still at the U of T. But like I lived in Kingston and I worked in Kingston. Like I was affiliated with U of T, but I was basically still working in Kingston. So we actually haven't met in person. I'd love to meet with him. It would be cool to do like a progressive YouTube meetup. I think Mexi and Step Back History did something like that a few months ago, but it would be cool again now that the community is growing and a lot of them live in and around the GTA. Once this is over, to have like some sort of meet and greet. That'd be kind of fun. David's viewership is much bigger than mine, but we both have our core chunk of fans that sort of live in Southern Ontario. So. Yeah, Jason Kennedy, you're right. That's why I used baseball as an example, because the Blue Jays are the only Canadian team, by definition, whenever the Jays play, they also have to play the U.S. one, because there's no Expos anymore. When there was the Expos, they were only, that might have been different. Heath Dillon, I could totally imagine Christo the Kid as a nationalist zealot. I mean, look, I wouldn't say I was a nationalist zealot. Like, I certainly wasn't a right-winger, but I was certainly like a patriotic Canadian. Like, I believed that Canada was good, And I had like a lot of Canadians back in the early 2000s. I was like, I hate America. We're so much better than Americans. I love that Joe, like that I Am Canadian beer commercial, even though I'm too young to drink beer. And I don't even like beer. I like Smirnoff Ice. Like, you know what I mean? I was definitely one of those types. But it was rooted in like a quote unquote like progressivism. That I saw America as bad because I saw them as conservative. Not that those views are fully inaccurate, but I'm like one of those Canadians you see on Twitter that will never admit that Canada also sucks ass. Like that was me as a teenager. Corey says, Canadian racism is when the brown person calling out racism gets kicked out of the building. Corey, you're 100% right. Like, Canada's polite racism means it's impolite to call it for what it is, right? No, you're 100% right. People, I think a lot of people saw the symbolism. It hit them right on the head during that what we've seen today. And I don't think it was an unreasonable interpretation of what we saw. I don't think anyway. I don't think so. Not sure, but that's my view. David's like, you don't like beer? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of beer. Sorry. I like rum and cokes. I like margaritas. I like cider. I like coolers. I basically like most liquor except for beer, frankly. I'm not a big fan. Yeah, a lot of people are saying they went through that phase in Canada. A lot of us did that. A lot of us did that. Oh, I think if you're talking about Lance, like Lance from the Surfs and stuff, yeah, they're great, but they live out west, right? They're out in Vancouver. So, a meet and greet, we'd have to really coordinate something. Whereas a lot of people are located naturally in Toronto. Yeah, I don't mind vodka. Vodka's not my favorite, but I don't mind it. It's like a neutral liquor, right? Like, But yeah, I'm a big fan of like ciders. We live close to the Prince Edward County, which is sort of like a wine country, but they also have a lot of ciders, so we drink a lot of cider there. So people are saying I'm canceled now. It's less than good. I always wondered what I would get canceled for. I guess it's my not liking beer. The cancel culture comes for us all. Samantha suggests mixing cider with whiskey. Drink combo. I've never even tried that. Maybe I will next time. I'll have some cider. I'll grab a cider and mix those two. That sounds like it could be good. It's won't be too strong. And it's kind of like a carbonated drink because the cider is all bubbly. Yeah, it's a good idea. Like, I don't know. I guess like when I was younger, I don't think I saw myself as socialist as I actually was. Like, the things I believe in now, I largely believed in back then. I just thought that, like, liberals also believe those things. It's sort of like, I don't know, like, it's weird. In any case, like, I sort of started to kind of hone in my ideological understandings in university. And I became more stridently socialist. And understanding what that means in university. Heath said he tried to cancel me for my beard, but I failed. I mean, yeah, my beard is awful. But I think we're all getting away with the beards right now because of COVID, right? Things are just, everyone's like, oh man, it's COVID. Everyone's just growing beards. I know a lot of people were not super happy with David Dole's new mustache. I know people had a big debate about that. I'm pro mustache. I think it looks good, but I know like there's a whole big debate. But COVID, people are looking by these things. Appleton rum is really good, Peggy. I really like the Kraken. I like the dark Kraken rum. I don't know if you guys get the Kraken in the States, but it's really good. I like the Kraken. Just like some Coca-Cola, the Kraken, and just maybe some lime, some like a fresh lime or lemon or some lime juice or whatever. John Barlett says, hey, I'm going to head out. Stay fresh, boy. John, thank you for your support. All the great questions and comments. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for stopping by. Yeah, you don't really see a whole lot of rubbing alcohol anymore. I mean, do people use it still? Like, I know, like, people use peroxide, right? Like, if you have, like, small, but, like, I don't know. I've bought peroxide before, but I don't think I've ever bought rubbing alcohol. Bert says Kraken is brutal. Really? Cuba Libre. Yeah, it's Cuba Libre. Dafrak says, Christo, if you have a Costco, look for the golden margarita mix. We do have a Costco in Kingston. We're not that far out of civilization, but Brianna makes a fantastic margarita. So I've never tried the mix, but I'd be reluctant, not because I don't think it would be good, but it's just Brianna's like fantastic at it. She's really good at making like a classic margaritas. Although I did see something on the internet about making a spicy margarita. And apparently all it is a regular margarita, triple sec, lime, the tequila, ice, shake it up. But what you do is in the shaker, you take some jalapeno and you take out the seeds to get rid of some of the heat. And you just you muddle the jalapeno and then you shake it with the jalapeno in it. You could either leave the jalapeno pieces in or take them out. And it just heats up the margarita a little bit. I haven't tried it, so I don't know if it's good or not. But it's something I do want to try. Bluebell says, when you have homemade margaritas, you don't need the green goo. I mean, I would agree with you there. I mean, I'm very fortunate that Brianna makes delicious margaritas. Although they're a lot of work. I always feel bad because I'm like, can I have a margarita? And she's like, and I'm like, please. And she's like, So, it is what it is. Dafrax has got like all the drink combinations. Dafrax, you can just start a YouTube drink channel. Don't use jalapenos. Use Tajin spice. It's better. Okay, I'll take a look into that. A lot of locals. I know Shelby, Lefty Mind, who's got a great new YouTube channel. Do check out Lefty Mind. They have a YouTube channel. I don't know if you can click onto it here, but if you just YouTube Lefty Mind, it should come up. They make videos on CanCon and stuff. It's really good. I know they're from Kingston, I believe, at least as their hometown. And then, so it's some cat lady from Belleville. Belleville, Trenton. Yeah, I'm not from here, right? So I lived in New Brunswick, grew up in Moncton, then did my undergraduate degree at UNB in Fredericton, which is just a couple hours away from Moncton. It's the capital of New Brunswick. And then, about 11 years ago now, almost 11 years ago now, I moved out to Kingston to do my master's degree, and I did it here at Queen's. And then, and then I went right into my PhD, did my PhD, and then finished that in 2015 or so, and have been living in Kingston ever since. Armored Pariah, or Adored Pariah, asks about neocolonialism. I mean, I'm not an expert on neocolonialism. I mean, I kind of go where the questions go. So when people are like, oh, let's talk about drinks and stuff, I'm happy to do it. But of course, if people want to ask questions about politics, don't worry. And I probably know more about them. I'm not an expert on neocolonialism, but I think it's a helpful way to think of things. Because, colonialism as a formal institution isn't as prevalent as it once was, right? We all know the broad history that, the earliest forms of colonialism go all the way back to the ancient world, where the Greeks and the Phoenicians basically set up colonies all over the Mediterranean. They built little outposts for fishing, for resources, and for trading all over. Not so much for expansion, although Magna Graecia and Carthage were a bit exceptions. And then modern colonialism really starts with like the global expansion of the Western European powers. To some degree, the conquering of Ireland was an early form of modern colonialism. And then after World War I, World War II, a lot of these countries began to decolonialize, right? But the economic institutions were still there. And so I think it's helpful to think of the fact that while there are very few formal colonies left, the countries that have a colonial legacy are often colonialized in implicit and indirect ways through economics, through certain trade deals, through the ability of countries to project power. And I think that's helpful. So whether you're talking about traditional Western neocolonialism, how a lot of these countries left Africa after, 40s, 50s, 60s, but their companies continued to dominate the countries that they were in, or we're talking about new waves where China is really starting to flex its muscle in the developing world by investing in resource extraction and in companies in places like Africa. I do think that we have to understand neocolonialism. It's important because people will say there's no more colonies anymore except for like small little islands. But that's not true. Countries can be effectively colonized through political and diplomatic and economic means, even if technically the colonializing forces don't control the government. Like directly, right? Yeah, Vaudry says controlling a country due to debt. That's part of it. Part of that is due to debt. It's not just debt, though. Like, I wouldn't say, for instance, that China controls the United States as a colonialist relationship, even though there's like a debt imbalance there. It's not just debt. But I do think that, like, countries that become dependent on these things. I mean, an argument actually, and I don't fully agree with it, but an argument was made even back in the 60s and 70s that Canada was effectively a colony of the United States. Like, clearly we weren't a colony in the sense that the United States got to pick our leadership, but we were a colony in the sense that our economy was utterly dependent on the U.S., that the biggest U.S. corporations, that most of Canada's big corporations were linked to the United States, that much of our key industries were owned by foreign investors, specifically from the United States, that our foreign policy was rooted mostly, not exclusively, but mostly in what the United States wanted or didn't want. And so Canada was seen effectively as a colony of the United States, right? Now, I don't know about if Canada can really be seen as a colony, but the point is people have been making these neo-colonialist observations for a long time now. Yes, and Gavin's right that was like a left-wing argument, and there was a lot of debate even back then. Some on the left saw Canada as a colony, and the only solution was to have better public ownership to fight back the American control. That's what the Waffle basically agreed to, like a left-wing faction in the NDP. But some other leftists said Canada might be subordinate in some ways to Britain and the United States, but Canada itself is more like those countries than they are the actual colonialized countries. That Canada exports mining companies all over the world. Canada is a G7 country. Canada is is a brutal colonizer of its own indigenous people. Canada plays a role in upholding global white supremacy. Canada is a colonializer more than they're colonized. So that was a debate on the left back then, and in some degree, still today, although not as much of the left is Canadian nationalist now as they were, say, pre-2000. Yeah, and a lot of people argued much the same, typical Canadian, that whether you agree or disagree that NAFTA eroded Canadian sovereignty, one of the arguments against it was NAFTA was going to, insofar as Canada was already sort of a colony of the United States, it would be even more so a colony after NAFTA. And NAFTA would take away the little freedoms Canadians have, and we would be trapped within the United States sphere forever, and we would never get out, and so on and so forth. And stopping NAFTA was our last chance. Now, obviously, that was overblown a bit, even if you disagreed with NAFTA, as I do. But a lot of people talked about the relationship as a colonializer-colonialist one, or colonializer-colonialized one. I mean, NAFTA was undoubtedly bad for working people, right? It was bad, no doubt in my mind. But it's just to say that, like, was it really a project of colonialism as much it was a product of neoliberalism? I don't know if it was a colonialist project. I don't know. In the way that, like, say, China's investments in Africa are more colonialist, or Canada's investments in Latin America through our mining companies are more colonialist. Justin says, "Hi, Christo. Hope you're well. Believe it or not, this strategic voter is closer to revoking his Liberal membership and joining the NDP over the Liberals' COVID benefit." Justin is a longtime viewer of the channel who was a strategic voter in the Canadian federal election back in October. But I think, like some people, has become a little bit disgruntled with our Liberal government. Of course, they haven't been all bad. They have implemented some policies under pressure from the NDP, but they could have just ignored it. But I think a lot of people are frustrated with how they left out very, very poor people from getting help. They left out disabled people. They left out students. Now, some of these people eventually, after a lot of pressure from regular Canadians and from the NDP, were included somewhat. But the Liberals have left out the most vulnerable people. So, like, I'm not going to romanticize the U.S. response, but the way the U.S. one worked is that even if you didn't make any money, you could get the $1,200 one-time benefit. That didn't exist in Canada. To get the $2,000 a month like benefit that we've been giving out, you need to have already had a job and had to have made $5,000 over the previous year. So if you were unemployed just because, and you were looking for a job, but now of course you're not going to get one now, given how crazy it is, then like you're not eligible for the aid program. And if you had a job, you were working hard, but say you just graduated from school and you just got your first full-time job, but you hadn't yet got the chance to earn $5,000, then you're SOL, right? So or if you're a disabled person, there was nothing extra for them or nothing to help specifically disabled people affected. Students were left out to dry fully at first, but even partially after a lot of pressure, Yeah, well, Sinistoria, why the hell did the CESB take so long? Well, Sinistoria, the reason is the Liberals were going to do fuck all for students, right? They were going to do nothing for students. Realized that students were pissed, that the NDP was breathing down their neck, that students were organizing against them, and that, they needed to do something. Now, what they could have done, and they could have had it done right away, is plug people into the CERB. Just give students the CERB. Let everyone who needs it get the CERB. But they didn't do that. So they had to create something, and that's why it took forever, because they had to flat-footedly create a whole new program. Simple as that. That's why it took so long. What do I think about the USMCA? I mean, look, it's not that different from NAFTA. There's some things that are hypothetically better in it, but I don't strictly care because it's not so much better or so much worse than NAFTA. Like, it's not a huge transformation. There are some things that are concerning around copyright law and intellectual property. There are some hypothetically better labor conditions. Some Mexican workers will see substantive raises under the USMCA, which is good. Like, those workers matter, and solidarity with workers of all lands. but it's not a great deal, and it's not a bad deal either. Like it's bad in the way that NAFTA is bad, to be clear, but it's not so much worse than NAFTA that I'm revolting at the sight of it. Jason Kennedy with the black cat. I know last time I think Jason Kennedy sent the black cat sticker. He just did it because he thought it was cool, but then we thought it was an allusion to the anarchism, the IWW, the cat who symbolizes labor militancy and the strike. But maybe now it does represent that. Justin Frederick says, do you think Kevin O'Leary could have defeated Trudeau in 2019? No. I don't think so. The man doesn't speak French. Man's very abrasive. No. Look, we need to realize that, like, Andrew Scheer won more votes than Trudeau. I don't know if O'Leary can keep every vote Scheer got, even in the West, and gain more votes elsewhere. Like, I don't think O'Leary loses the West, but I don't know. Does the NDP lose Saskatoon West with somebody not of their own from the region? I don't know. I don't think O'Leary wins. I think a more modern... I think like a Peter MacKay might win in 2019. Because he's going to carry most of the West. He's going to win more seats in the Maritimes. He's got a better shot at the really close suburban Ontario ridings. And he might pick up 2 or 3 more in Quebec. Like, I think Peter MacKay would have had a chance to win. I do. Or like a Rona Ambrose. But not a Kevin O'Leary. I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. Comment editor at O'Leary for Oubliette 2020. They did reject the Conservatives anyway, but again, the Conservatives don't need to win Quebec. But it's helpful if they can pick up a few here and there. So let's look at it this way. To win a minority, what do the Conservatives need to do? They needed to win 20 more seats or something? Well, let me pull this up here. I'm just going to pull this up. Okay, so pulling up the 2019 federal election. Liberals won 157 seats. The Conservatives won 121 seats. Now, if we assume that, say, the Conservatives can pull half those seats from the Liberals. So let me see, 150. So the gap between them is 36. If they could pull half from the Liberals, then so if they could say, okay, let's say if they pull 18 from the Liberals, then they're tied because it's a twofer. But let's say they can win 25 more seats across the country. Some from the Liberals to get the double switch and some from the other parties. Right? I think, for instance, you look, where can they win more? Well, they can't really win more in Saskatchewan and Alberta and not really win much more in Manitoba. So I think you look, where can they win? They can win a few more in Quebec, seats that they won in 2011. They can win a few more in the Maritimes. They basically got shut out of Nova Scotia still in some ways. And they can win more in suburban Ontario. And that's where I think they needed to pick somebody who's from the Maritimes or who's from suburban Ontario. So I do think that Peter MacKay could have won. Samantha says, Christo, do you think the Democrats will win the Senate in November? It's still going to be tough, right? The way it works is the seats up for grabs, they're going to have a bit of a tough one, but I do think it's possible. The polling as it is right now makes it more than possible. It's not a guarantee, but it makes it fairly if the polls are accurate, and I'm not saying they are, but if they are, I wouldn't be shocked. Which Senate seats are up for grabs? Let me look. 2020. Senate. Okay, so if you look at the 2020 Senate elections, the Senate seats up for grabs are, like, there's a good chunk of them that the Democrats, I think, have a chance of picking up some of the seats. Like, looking at some of these polls, I don't know, right? Like, I'm not sure. Like, looking here on Wikipedia, they're saying 12 races are competitive. They're saying 12 races are competitive. Doug Jones, he's the Democrat. He might lose his seat to Jeff Sessions. I know that sounds awful, but Doug Jones won that because he replaced Sessions, who joined the administration, and they ran a literal pedophile against him. And he won it. So, it's going to be tough for him to win this one, I think. Right? I don't think he's going to win. He's not, like they're saying, he's not raising a ton of money. It was nice that he won last time, but it was kind of an off win. Alabama is a very conservative state. John Hickenlooper, who was the former governor, he's seen as a favorite to flip Colorado. Colorado is moving more and more blue. Arizona, because Martha McSally's at risk. Maine, Susan Collins is at risk. North Carolina, see, you know, the more and more I look at it, guys, like, I'm not an expert on, like, state Senate-wide elections. I do see the Democrats of having a chance. There's a mixture of, like, some of the Republicans are very unpopular. Donald Trump is dragging down the like the prospects of Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate. I could see it happening. I really could see the Democrats winning. And I could see McConnell losing. I could. I know it's not the same. But last year, November 2019, the Democrats won the governor's mansion in Kentucky. And that's a statewide election. So the same people who vote for governor are the same people that vote for senator. And so if the Democrats can win the governor, they could also win the Senate. Now, I think another advantage for the Democrats is Trump is polling even worse now than he was then. And a third advantage is that Democrats benefit with high turnout. And the highest turnout elections are presidential elections. Elections that happen in non-presidential years generally, all things being equal, have lower turnout. So you add the fact that the Democrats in an off year, in an odd number year, where there's not even congressional elections, the Democrats were able to flip a Republican mansion to their side. I think Mitch McConnell's in a lot of danger. I do. Like, I do. Yeah, Samantha Sider saying Susan Collins super unpopular in Maine right now. That wasn't the case a year ago, but it is now, right? Comrade Internet, haven't listened to that yet. I want to listen to it. It's just, like, right now, in addition to making, 2 or 3 videos a day, like, Brianna does her, like, 9 to 5-ish job, right? And she does it from home. But the fact is that, like, there's no childcare. So, I'm with Demetrios, except for when I get some time away to make videos when Brianna is between meetings or during his nap or when she's outside with him or something. And then I make a video as quick as I can. So, I don't have a lot of time to do anything but the kind of core work I've been doing. So I will listen to it eventually. It's just, I have no extra time for almost anything right now. I mean, I get the point about voter suppression. I get it. But the fact is that the Democrats won big victories in 2018. And so, yeah, I don't doubt that there's vote rigging in the United States, and it's largely done by Republicans. But it's not so endemic that they can override the result. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I have more confidence in the Canadian system than the American one. But if the Democrats turn out, they're going to win. They're going to win. They're going to romp the House at least. They're going to win the presidency. And then I think they get a great shot in the Senate. Again, the problem with the Senate is that it's like the seats that are up for grabs. Some of them, like, there's not a whole, they need so many to actually make gains. A lot of the ones up for grabs are in states that they can't make a lot of gains. Like, for instance, like, John Cornyn is likely safe. Wyoming and West Virginia is up. Those are safe. South Dakota and South Carolina are likely safe. Like, you're looking at a lot of these with pretty safe senators, right? Often +9, +10, +14. Like, you know. One thing I've seen, and this is very interesting, is Joni Ernst, who's a senator for Iowa. She is considered in trouble right now. She's only a +3, and because Trump is polling so badly, she's in trouble. There's also a question of Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler is in Georgia. It's a little bit of a conservative state, but she was one of the people that got busted for insider trading, basically, right? And so I think, like, you're seeing some of these formerly safe Republican Senate seats come into play. The thing, Black Halo, I'll say this about turning out for Biden. I am worried about Biden's enthusiasm. I am. Deeply. I've made videos on it. Biden beat Bernie in states that Bernie slaughtered Hillary in. And so, we have to be honest with ourselves. If the argument was in 2016, and I believe it, that Bernie would have drove turnout in the crucial states that they needed to win, then I have to believe, if Biden beat Bernie in those states, that Biden can draw turnout in those states. At least hypothetically. Right? Because we have to be honest with ourselves. Biden won Michigan handily against Bernie. And Bernie beat Hillary in Michigan. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure. One thing that has been happening is that the enthusiasm gap for Biden has been narrowing vis-a-vis Trump. It's still there, but people hate Trump so much that they're gaining enthusiasm for Biden. Biden only won due to trickery. I mean, to some degree, but again, we have to remember that, like, fundamentally, you can't put it all down to trickery. Can't all want, again, Hillary Clinton lost Michigan to Bernie, and the entire party was behind her, and no one really knew who Bernie was. 4 years later, Biden again trounced Bernie in Michigan. Trounced him. Right? So my only point is, again, I'm not defending Biden, but my only point is, like, look, if the argument is, Hillary lost Michigan and that's why she didn't do a good job there, well, look, Biden won Michigan handily over Bernie. Right? So my view is that Biden was always, like, if you looked at the polling, I know polling's just polling, but if you looked at the polling, there were two candidates that consistently polled better than Trump. And that was Bernie and Biden. And at times Bernie was better, and at times Biden was better. They're the only two candidates, and Biden doesn't deserve it, but they're the only two candidates that seemingly, like, regular working class Democrats, white or black or Hispanic, actually liked. None of those people liked Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Warren even. They didn't like them. They did like Biden, and they did like Bernie. I mean, Jason Kennedy, so do we believe that, for instance, I mean, like, do we believe that Nevada was rigged for Bernie? I don't know, right? I don't know. I mean, look, I need to see, before I'm going to say that there's election fraud, systemic election fraud, not just, they didn't put polling stations at college stations. That's bad. But actual literal ballot destruction and theft and stuffing. I need to see more evidence than exit polls. I get it. I get that the exit polls being wrong is a red flag. But I need to see actual proof. Because I'm not going to make that claim until I see actual proof. And then you have to prove that that was specifically aimed at Bernie. Because we have to remember, guys, let's be real, that in Texas, where the students had to wait a long time, many of the black areas of Texas also had very long wait times during that primary. And as we know, black voters, especially in southern states, were not pro-Bernie. They weren't. So if it was really being rigged against Bernie from an electoral perspective, they would have ensured every single black person could have voted as easily as they could. And every student as hard as they could. But what ended up happening is that black people and students were disenfranchised. So I need to see literal physical proof of voter fraud before I talk about voter fraud. It's that serious of a thing. I'm not going to make speculations on it. Right now, the logical explanation is that Bernie lost because the media screwed him, because voters are dumb. I'll say that. Voters are wrong sometimes. Voters can be wrong. But Bernie lost. And we have to deal with that. He lost. Do I think Bernie could have won by staying in? No. I think Bernie was done after Super Tuesday. I think he was done. I'm not saying he shouldn't have stayed in to keep pushing the issues, but Bernie was done. He was 100% done. No. Brandon, see, these neighborhoods were, they were. I don't think it was specifically aimed at young black people. These were like black areas of all ages. There were famous images of African Americans waiting 10 hours, 12 hours to vote, and they were not sub 40, sub 45 people in all cases. Like, my view is the one thing I could have seen helping Bernie. Now, maybe I'm wrong. And I think maybe it would have backfired even harder, was if, for instance, and I know you guys would hate this specific suggestion, and I don't think I would make it either, but let's say hypothetically, Bernie wins Nevada. Everything before Nevada happens as usual. Nevada, the same thing. And then the day after Nevada, Bernie comes out with Kamala Harris as his vice presidential nominee. It would have been very early to make that announcement. But if Bernie comes out on the Monday, or like it's a Saturday primary, he comes out Monday morning with Kamala Harris, or like somebody like that, I think maybe that gets people to vote for him in South Carolina. Maybe he doesn't win South Carolina, but maybe he only loses it by 10 instead of 30 or whatever it was. Right? Like, Like, there were a few things that changed. One thing that changed, and it ultimately didn't matter because Biden ended up winning by a lot, but there were less caucuses this time. Did you notice a lot of states switched from caucuses to voting primaries? Caucuses are good for Bernie. Like, there are real debates about whether caucuses are good or not. Like, in some ways they're good because They encourage more active participation, but they're bad in some ways because they limit people that work a long hours or that don't have childcare access and things like that. And so one of the arguments is that one of the arguments I've heard is that when the caucuses disappeared, it gave a more of an advantage to Bernie. I mean, yeah, getting the Jesse Jackson endorsement earlier would have helped. The Jim Clyburn, I don't know about getting Jim Clyburn. He clearly wouldn't support Bernie. The guy's not a progressive. He's at least on economic issues, he's a centrist at best. At best, he's probably to the right of Biden even on some of these issues. So I mean, Clyburn never would have endorsed Bernie, but I don't see how you stop Clyburn endorsing. It's just about trying to get ahead of that. I mean, Cat Lady, I totally get you. And on this channel, survivors, I could get why if you're a survivor, you wouldn't want to vote for Biden or Trump, frankly, for that matter. Look, again, on this channel, I will never tell you to vote for Biden. I probably will tell you not to vote for Trump. I'm going to be honest. Trump's awful. But I will never say vote for Biden. Never. Never will I say that. Ever, ever, ever. You know, you might have a legitimate perspective that voting for harm reduction is the best strategy. And if you believe that, you vote for Biden. Or you might believe that you have to vote your values no matter what, even if it means Trump wins or that, you know, your vote is quote unquote wasted and you vote for Howie Hawkins or whoever, or you write in somebody and you do that. That's fine too. People are welcome. People are welcome here. Again, this is not a vote shaming space, you know? I don't know what I would do. Honestly, right now, I'd probably vote for Biden as much as it sickens me. Trump is awful. But I would never judge anybody who didn't do that. I mean, it depends, right? Gene, like, this is an interesting debate. Like, I don't like that, like, not voting for Biden is a vote for Trump. Because logically, not voting for Trump is a vote for Biden. Right? Like, so logically, I hate that argument. I will also never say to you that if you don't vote for Biden, you're electing Trump. I won't say that. Because again, if you're not voting for Trump, you're electing Biden if Biden wins. So, yeah, a lot of people were right. Isaiah's right. Like, Bernie should have went harder at Biden. I agree. I agree that Bernie, like, the fact that, like, for whatever reason, Bernie and Biden got along clouded Bernie's judgment to some degree. I think that's a fair criticism, personally. Like, at the end of the day, like, well, here's the thing. Bernie Sanders, if we remember, before Iowa, Bernie went hard on Biden on Social Security. And that hurt Biden. Biden started to dip when that happened. Right? And so the lesson there should have been, okay, like, maybe we have to go hard at our opponents. Don't lie. Bernie wasn't lying or smearing Biden. He was just sharing, he was just sharing Biden's quotes and Biden clips. Right? You know? You know, that's my viewpoint. Dude, man, that's interesting with notifications. They don't always come up unless you click all notifications. And sometimes what happens is that depending on the timing, if there's more than 3 videos in 24 hours, you might not see it. Ideally, you should get notifications if you click the bell. But the YouTube system is not perfect. If you've clicked the bell and you've clicked all notifications and I haven't put 3 videos out in 24 hours, and I don't think I have today, because I put out 2 yesterday, and only 1 so far today. So, besides this. But, you know. But we definitely talked about Jagmeet Singh early on. Like, we sort of did a brief intro, took some super chats, and then talked about the Jagmeet Singh thing. So, yeah. But yeah, Bernie never went back at Biden. Bernie never went back on him. I don't know. Like, when you click the bell, guys, when you click it, it should say, like, it should give you, like, all notifications or personalized. And if you click all notifications, that's, like, the best choice, I think. Like, I think is how it works. And so, see, my name is Hello says he got one. Like, I know when you click personalized, it might depend on how much you watch that channel, the time of the day. Like YouTube, for instance, I've noticed this, guys. Most of the notifications I get for a video go out when the video goes up. Because for, like, you guys that have clicked the bell, I send out a video, you get a notice on your phone or whatever, and you watch the video. And you guys are awesome. That's the one thing you can do, like, if you want, like, honestly, just, like, purely cynically, watch every video I make, even if you don't care about the topic, because YouTube's like, oh, this video's great. And if you watch it through to the end, and YouTube will show it to more people. Simple as that. But what I've noticed is that sometimes, like, the next morning, a few notifications will go out about a video that I posted yesterday. And it might be based on the fact that that person likes to watch their videos at that time of day. So YouTube has decided, okay, this video is doing okay. Let's remind this person with a notification at this time. I, every once in a while, will get a notification from another YouTube channel about a video that's 3 days old. Right? Okay, Comrade Internet says a majority of Atlanta police have walked off. Let me just take a quick look. See what this says about this. Oh, I see. Blue flu. Yeah, I mean, I have to read up about this a little bit more, but what people call blue flu is basically police officers are calling in sick as a form of protest. It's a thing unions do sometimes, you know. But yeah, it's very clearly here. Yeah, so that happens sometimes with the delayed videos. So guys, it's about 10:30. It's been a long day here. I'm going to wrap up the stream. I'm going to go read up this people walking out things, Comrade Internet. Maybe I'll have a video out after this. I'm not sure. I'll have to see what the story is. But I want to look into it. But this was great. As per usual, I want to thank you all for coming. For those who just gave great questions, for those with the super chats, it helps to sustain and grow the channel. If you want to support the channel on an ongoing basis, you can do a couple things. You can click and become a member. You get this little badge for live chats, and I'll put your name at the end of my end screen. And you can also get similar perks at Patreon. I have a link to my Patreon in the description. You can go check that out there. And if you want to follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, those sorts of things. Those links should be in the description as well. That way you could see my videos, but also just posts that aren't my videos. Be sure to join the Discord. The Discord, it's like, for those who don't know, it's basically like a chat room. And it's not just for me. There's other progressive channels of Discords. There are Discords dedicated to video games and things like that. So it's sort of like a chat room system. So it's really good. It's a really good system. Adored Pariah says, poor man shouting around a coffee. Thank you so much for the support and your great questions tonight, Pariah. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But yeah, again, for those who are new to the channel, do this every night, Wednesday, 8 p.m. I thank you so much for your support. Again, if you have clicked the bell, if you haven't subscribed, most of you probably are, click subscribe. If you are, click the bell. And if you have clicked the bell, click all notifications on it. And you know, when you have the opportunity, be sure to check out the videos. One thing to know with this channel is that I post a video almost every day, and more often than not, 2 or 3 videos. So if you miss a notification, you can always just hop on to the channel and just watch the newest videos. Like, you know, just if you check it once a day at a certain time, you'll catch all the videos I've made in the previous day. So guys, my love to Smokey. Thanks. One last hurrah for Jagmeet. Jagmeet did great today. He's growing into the job every day, and I'm very proud to have him as the leader of our party. I don't always agree with Jagmeet. Disagreed with him before. Israel-Palestine, he's not good enough on that. He's not as radical as I would be, but I like Jagmeet. I like him a lot. Okay. Yeah, in terms of interviews, I'm still looking at getting more people to do interviews. Again, I've done one with Nikki Ashton and Matthew Green. I have some contacts about getting maybe more MPs on, but I'd also like to talk to people that aren't NDP MPs. And certainly, I mean, Sandy Hudson would be someone I'd love to speak to. I don't know if she would want to come on to my show. I'm kind of small fries compared to her in some ways, but she'd be somebody I'd love to talk to about a whole bunch of things. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll certainly reach out to people, and maybe they'll reach out to me, and we'll figure things out. Basically, dude, man, I'll just finish with this. Jagmeet called a Bloc Quebecois who was doing something racist and got kicked out of the house for it, and was right to do what he did, and we support him. Okay, guys, have a good one. It's also at the beginning of the stream. If you've caught up late, you can watch it. I don't put them up for auto viewing afterwards because it hurts the algorithm. But if you have the link, if you're currently here, you can come back and watch it because I don't delete the videos. I just hide them. Okay, guys, have a good one.